Hello everyone, it's Mr. Zong back with the videos. Now in this video, I'm going to go through some slightly more complicated examples of perimeter questions. So let's get started. So in this first example, it says, in a right angle triangle, you can use Pythagoras' theorem to calculate the third side of the triangle. Then you can calculate the perimeter. Remember, in an isosceles triangle, the axis of symmetry forms two right angle triangles. Okay. So I'm not going to go through the second part here. I'm just going to go through the first part for now. So as you probably already remembered, Pythagoras' theorem for a triangle means the sum of the squares of the two shorter sides gives you the square of the longer side. So that means in this example, 19 squared plus 25 squared gives you h squared. So the sum of the two sides, the sum of the two shorter sides, when you square them, will give you the length of the longer side squared. Okay. Okay. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go through some examples and hopefully it will make plenty of sense to you. So question 1. For each of the triangle, calculate the length of the third side, then calculate the perimeter, and so correct to one decimal place where necessary. All right. So I'm just going to copy this question here. There we go. There's the nice, beautiful little question here. And what we need to do is we have to do what the question says. Calculate the length of the third side. So I'm just going to let this side be x. Okay. And from Pythagoras' theorem, we know that the sum of the square of the two sides gives you the length of the third side squared, where the third side is the hypotenuse. So we can say that x squared is equal to 15 squared plus 36 squared. And to work out what 15 squared plus 36 squared is, I expect you to use a calculator. Now, I do not expect you to do this in your head. So this gives you 1,521. So x squared equals to 1,521. So what is x? Well, to find what x is, we take the square root of both sides of the equation. So x is equal to the square root of 1251. And the question says, answer to correct to one decimal place where necessary. So I'm going to write this to one decimal place. Okay, so that's equal to, type this onto my calculator, 39. Now, once we know what the length of x is, we can now work out what the perimeter of the triangle is. Now we know all three side lengths. So we can say that P for perimeter is equal to, you have the 15, you have the 36, and then you have the x, which is 39, like how we worked it out. Now this, you can either do it in your head, or you can use a calculator. So 15 plus 36 gives you 51, plus 39 is 90. And don't forget to write the units, centimeters. Okay. Alright, so that's question 1. Now let's go do a slightly different question. Say question 4, for example. Question 4. Now, as you can see, you probably realize why I picked this example and not question 2. So what's the difference between question 4 and question 1? Both involve right angle triangles. But why did I pick this question? Well, the reason I picked this question is because in this question, the x is not the hypotenuse, as you can see. Whereas here, the x is the hypotenuse. To find what the hypotenuse is, make sure you find the side that's opposite to the right angle. So in this question, the hypotenuse is 28. It's not x. Okay? So then, what does this mean? That means we know that the sum of the two sides, that's not the hypotenuse, in other words, x and 15, will give you 28. So that means x squared plus 15 squared will give you 28 squared. And what we can do is we can simplify what 15 squared is. So 15 squared is 225. And 28 squared, well, That's another story. I've got to use my calculator for that. 784. There we go. Now, what we need to do is we need to bring the numbers to the other side so we can make x squared by itself. So then we have to take away 225 from both sides. So we take away 225 from both sides. So then what are we left with? We're left with the x squared plus 225 minus 225, which gives you just x squared, is equal to, now take away this number by 225, you get 5, 5, 9. Right. Now, since we don't like x having a 2 at the top, we want to get rid of the 2, so we square root both sides. And that's equal to, use the calculator. Now this is not a whole number this time, so I'm going to write it to one decimal place like what the question asks. So that will be 23.6. Okay. Alright, so now we've worked out what x is. Now we can work out the perimeter because we know the length of all three sides. So the perimeter is equal to 28 plus 15 plus 23.6. Alright, and this should give you 43 plus this is 66.6. Oh, it's a interesting number there. Now the unit should be what? Centimeters. Okay, so that's question 4 for you. Alright, so these questions are out of the way. Now I'm going to go through some slightly more different questions, and this is when I need to use this piece of information. Remember, in an isosceles triangle, the axis of symmetry forms two right-angled triangles. Now, what the axis of symmetry is basically a line that cuts the triangle into two, right? So in this isosceles triangle, the axis of symmetry is this vertical line. So this axis of symmetry forms two right-angled triangles. So in other words, this is a right-angled triangle here, and this is a right-angled triangle there. Okay? And these two right-angled triangles are identical. Now, that's something they didn't mention here, but I'm just going to let you know. So let's take a look at one of these questions, okay? Because it's a little bit different, so it might be a bit confusing at first. Okay. So this is question 6. It's already written for you, but I'm going to write over it. Alright, so in this question, it's asking you to find the perimeter. Now, we know the length of one of the sides, which is 14, but we do not know the length of the other two sides. So how are we going to find the length of these sides? So as you can see that we know this side, right? We know the height. Now, do we know the base of this right angle triangle? So what I'm trying to say is, do we know the length of this? We do, right? The length of this is basically half of the 14. Right. So we know that this is 7. If we know that this is 7 and this is 15, we can work out the hypotenuse using Pythagoras' theorem. Right. So I'm just going to put this as x. So we can say that 7 squared plus 15 squared equals to x squared, because x is the hypotenuse. Now simplify this, so we get 49 plus 225 is equal to x squared. Okay. Now we just have to add up these numbers, so that's what? 274. Now, what is x? So we've got a square root, 274. So what does x equal to? So x is equal to 16.6 if you want to write it to one decimal place. Okay. So we know what x is. Now we have to find out what the perimeter of the whole triangle. So we know that because both of these have the two lines, this is also equal to x. Right? So to find the perimeter, we just have to add x with x. So 16.6 plus 16.6 plus, now we plus 14 here because the base is 14. Okay, so that should give you 47.2. centimeters. Make sure you write the units, very important. Okay, so hopefully by me going through this one question, you will understand how to do the other questions, because the concept required to do the rest is all very similar. Okay. Right. Now the next type of examples I'm going to go through are the perimeter of composite shapes. Okay. So let's get started. So let's just go through question A first. Okay. Question A, like I said earlier, A usually has the easier questions. So let's just do question 8. Okay. Because I picked the last one because last one may be the most difficult. Now with this one, as you can see, this is a rhombus, because a rhombus has 4 sides equal in length. Now you might want to ask, why did I say this is not a square? Well, the reason is because a square needs to have a right angle and 4 sides that are equal, whereas this is just 4 sides that are equal, but it does not specify whether they're right angles or not. But it doesn't matter, because the perimeter can be determined, because we know that one side is 12 and these are all going to equal to 12 because they all have the 2 lines, right? So then the perimeter is equal to 12 times by 4, because there's 4 sides that are 12 centimeters each, and that's equal to 48 centimeters. So that's pretty easy, right? And for the rest of these, you should be able to do them. If not, you can post them on Google Classroom. Now, B is where the interesting questions are, and these are the type of questions you would see in the exam. So let's just take a random pick. I'm just going to pick question 2. Okay. So question 2. There we go. All right. So to find the perimeter of this shape, what we can do is we can try to find the length of all the sides. Okay. So we know this side. We know this side. Now, do we know what this side is? Well, it doesn't tell us, but that doesn't mean we can't work it out. So this side is made up of this side and this side, right? And we know that this side is equal to 8 and this side is equal to 9 based on these two sides. So then we can say that this is 8 and this is 9. So in total, what should it be? 8 plus 9. So the total length should be 8 plus 9, which gives you 17. Okay, so now we know what this side is. We know this side is 12, we know this side is 9, but we don't know this side. Now to work out this side, we know that this whole side is 20, and this is 12, so then this has to be 8, because 8 plus 12 gives you 20, right? This side plus this side gives you this side. Alright, so now that we worked out the length of all the sides, just going to rub this out, just going to write 17 here. We can just add up the length of all the sides and Bob's your uncle. Alright, so the total perimeter is equal to 20 plus 17 plus 12 plus 9 plus 8 plus 8. Now normally, just to double check, just make sure that the number of sides you're you're adding is equal to the number of numbers you have here. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do I have 6 numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so we have the same number of numbers. So we haven't missed out on any of the sides. And with this, just type it into your calculator. So I'm just going to do it now. So that's should give you 74 centimeters. Right. So that wasn't too bad. Right. Now let's take a look at a slightly more difficult question. So let's see. How about question 8? Okay. Now this should be okay. So we can apply the same concept as what we normally apply to finding the perimeter of shapes. We find the length of all the sides on the outside and we add them up. So starting from this, we know this is 9, this is 18. Okay, but we don't know what this side is. And how are we going to work that out? We actually don't know what this side is. So we can just let this side be x, okay? Because we don't know what this is. This is 9, this is 27, this is 9. And what is this? We also don't know what this side is. And we're not sure if it's the same as x, so we're going to let this be y. And this vertical side. Okay, this vertical side is basically the same length as this 18 centimeters. So we know that this is 18. Okay, so now we're in a strange situation here. We don't know what x and y are. So how can we work it out? So this is a bit of a tricky question, but I'm just going to spoil it for you and tell you the answer. But as you can see, this side, we know that this length is 27, right? So we know that this length is 27, and we know that this length plus this length plus this length is also going to be 27, right? Because this side is equal to those 3 sides when combined, right? So then with that in mind, when it comes to adding up the sides of finding the perimeter of the shape, we don't need to include these 3 sides. We can just assume that these 3 sides, they add up to 27, right? Okay. All right. So then with that in mind, we can start working on the perimeter. So perimeter is equal to, so we have the 18 plus the 18, right? So 18 times 2 plus these 3 sides. And we know that these 3 sides, they add up to 27, right? Plus 9 plus 27 plus the final 9. So for this question, we don't actually need to know what the length of these 2 sides are, but we just know that the length of these 2 sides plus this side gives you 27. Okay. So with that in mind, just type it all into your calculator and you should get the answer. So that should be, you should get 108 centimeters. Okay. So hopefully by going through these 2 examples, it's enough for you to get a good understanding of how to find perimeters, finding the perimeter of a composite shape. So a composite shape is basically 2 shapes combined to form a new shape. Okay. So that should be all for today. I'll see you next time.